WrestleMachine back with another data transfer. WrestleMachine here. I've had many people ask me about Hogan's debut in WCW. Well, here is some coverage of that time. What you gonna do? June 20, 1994 Observer Newsletter, WCW debuts Hulk Hogan. WWF debuts Fake Undertaker. Nuff said. By Observer staff. Wrestling Observer Newsletter. P.O. Box 1228, Campbell, California 950091228 June 20, 1994. WWF and WCW unleashed the television debuts this past weekend in spectacular fashion of the wrestlers they are counting on to carry the promotions in upcoming pay-per-view shows this year. In the case of WCW, it is one of the biggest name in the history of the industry in Hulk Hogan. With WWF, it is an unknown on a national basis, Brian Lee, dressed up amazingly like its most over character, The Undertaker. Hogan's debut on a live cut-in from Orlando, Florida's Disney World came on its June 11 WCW Saturday Night Show. For the entire show, the announcers, with pre-taped matches from Atlanta going on, emphasized nothing but Hogan's arrival, several times calling it the biggest signing in sports history and biggest day in the history of wrestling. One of WCW's many drawbacks in the past has been when running an angle, after a commercial break, they ignore the angle for the rest of the show, thus the angle seemingly loses importance and means little or nothing when it comes to the box office. If anything, they went overboard in the other direction this time. Toward the end of the show, Hogan came out to a ticker tape parade in a car with Jimmy Hart running around in front of him like a maniac, with about 200 fans dressed up in Hogan merchandise passed out by the WCW staff. Total manipulation, but that is what this business is all about. Afterwards, Hogan gave a speech talking about coming to WCW, basically talking about the unification of the WCW World and International titles at the June 23 Clash of the Champions and trying to use wrestling history that didn't apply. He called the WCW belt as the one that was held by Gorgeous George, Lou Thesz, and Harley Race. First off, George never even was considered during his heyday for the World Heavyweight title, although he did draw great houses against Thesz during his hot period. George was basically a junior heavyweight, although there was a period when he was the biggest draw in the United States. Promoters from that era felt the title needed to be treated seriously to keep its aura and why the likes of Thesz rather than gimmick wrestlers would dominate it. The belt held by Thesz and Race was the NWA title, which has nothing at all to do with the current WCW title except in after history. He then called Sting's title, which at least is the physical belt that was once the NWA title and originated as the revitalized NWA title, as the other title. Historical remarks were surprising since the Hogan era was based on ignoring past wrestling history, not to mention that for years Thesz was never spoken kindly about Hogan's ability as a wrestler. He talked mainly about wrestling Ric Flair, which some in WCW are hyping as the first time the two have met despite the fact they had a 1991-92 feud in the WWF, although never had a clean finish in a singles match nor wrestled before on a pay-per-view show. Because of this, WCW officials are expecting a 1.0 buy rate for the show, about double what they've been averaging of late, which would at least for that show more than pay for Hogan's share, and exceed any pay-per-view over the past year except WrestleMania and SummerSlam. Others think that 1.0 figure is out of the realm of possibility. While obviously lacking the size that made Hulk Hogan famous, he looked down 60 to 70 pounds from his peak WWF years. He looks in great shape for a man who is almost assuredly not on steroids any longer and had been for more than a decade and is nearly 41 years old. In the interview in front of fans, plants and extras, he still projected the charisma that made him one of the great box office draws in history. The entire spectacular production was nearly ruined by the reporters. Those asking questions were actually actors hired through MGM, as the few reporters who were there were asked to keep quiet. In an unintentionally hilarious spot, former WCW jobber Randy Hogan, who was used in years past to mock Hogan, actually was on camera 2 or 3 times taking sound for a local radio station unbeknownst to many in the company. The reporters were scripted lame and redundant questions, which showed that the actual content of the skit wasn't planned out well. Because of the amount of money it took to bring Hogan in, figures reported in the Observer coming from the Titan camp of $300,000 per match for 3 pay-per-view shows and 3 clashes plus 25% of any increase in pay-per-view revenue above the recent WCW average, 25% of the house for a handful of house show dates in Europe and the United States, and 65% of all merchandising revenue for a period ending December 31, 1994 are said to be by company and independent sources as close to if not right on the money. This is the biggest promotional risk taken in the United States since the WWF decided to go national more than 10 years ago and rolled the dice booking major arenas throughout the country for closed circuit of the first WrestleMania. While it has and will be analyzed to death both here and elsewhere, it can be simplified by saying this. If WCW's goal is business bottom line, this is a risk with the odds stacked against it. If WCW's goal is to be number one in the US or even world wrestling business, the odds are even greater of achieving that goal, but if that is the goal, this is a move that had to be made to have any chance. WCW, going down its present pre-Hogan road, was already going nowhere in a hurry. Realistically, there was no new piece of talent, no new booker, no way to repackage Sting or Vader or anyone else that was going to make a significant change in its direction. It needed a shock, and while this may not be it, this has a better chance than anything they could come up with in 1994. The fact that Hogan's last WWF run was a flop is significant, but in studying similar moves in this business, mainly with superstars in Japan jumping offices, whatever staleness they had previously when they jumped to a new group usually went away when they started to face new opponents in new situations. When they jumped to a group that was hot, despite the fact they themselves may have been cold, it normally revitalized their drawing power and career when they were in hot scenarios against hot opponents. When they jumped to a group that was cold, the usual result is their drawing power went south. For example, in 1984 when Riki Choshu was the hottest wrestler in Japan, he and about a dozen others jumped from New Japan to All Japan, and the result was that All Japan was on fire for the first year. When Akira Maeda, who was not the hottest wrestler in Japan, formed the second UWF in 1988, the group got hot and he became the hottest wrestler in Japan. The next year, when Genichiro Tenryu, one of the two hottest wrestlers in Japan at that time, and several others jumped from All Japan to form SWS when billionaire Hachiro Tanaka offered Tenryu a $4 million, 5-year deal, at the time the most lucrative in pro wrestling history, that group was cold and Tenryu's popularity nosedived. When put in a new surrounding, it is not the person but the surrounding that determines whether it is going to work. For all the hype and talk, the results of big money signings of Gene Okerlund and Bobby Heenan were supposed to be able to increase television ratings. Yet with their addition, not to mention holding the main singles title up to build up a Flair Steamboat match on TV, and frequent Hogan interviews, ratings for last month were exactly the same level they were 1 year ago. The problem, well, among many, since Ted Turner purchased WCW from Jim Crockett in 1988, is that nobody seems to know which direction is the primary one of this company. Jim Herd ran the company for 3 years and it was never clear if the goal was to become the top organization, or to be profitable, and as a result, it never came close to being either. Kip Frey replaced him with a clear goal of becoming number one, but he was dumped in a matter of months because the higher-ups felt he was spending too much money, even though there were positive signs, such as house show business picking up. His incarnation of the TBS Saturday show was probably the most boring to date, and, more importantly, came at the wrong time of the year, so the ratings took a double dip from going into the warmer months and because of show quality. Bill Watts came in with the directive of running the show as a business, to get the losses down as much as possible primarily, which he attempted to do, but his problems were legendary and he didn't last very long. The latest architect, Eric Bischoff, seems to be publicly proclaiming the goal to be number one, although behind the scenes his actions seem to be taking both roads. Taking both roads isn't necessarily mutually exclusive, but without a clear priority on which one is the major goal, the odds are that neither goal will be achieved. It is pretty well established that the original plan was for Hogan to win the newly unified title at the Orlando pay-per-view show, but that may be or may no longer be the case. Hogan is expected to wind up with the unified title at some point, which, given how much they are banking on him, has to be done and done fairly quickly. It may not be done on July 17th, which may be too quickly. Whatever happens, Hogan has creative control of all his scenarios. If he doesn't want to do a job in a certain way, it won't be done that way, or at all if that's his decision. Because of Hogan's name, WCW received a significant amount of mainstream publicity this past week, with 2 different stories running across the wires and several spots on CNN. On Monday, yet another press conference was taped for airing on WCW on June 25, this one with Ted Turner himself showing up and signing Hogan and Flair to a contract for the Orlando match, which would be the first time Turner himself has involved himself in a wrestling angle, which will give the match an awful lot of mainstream publicity. On Monday night, Hogan appeared on a live late-night sports call-in show on CNN, the first wrestler ever in that spot. Hogan looked tired on the show, but came off pretty well. The most ironic thing about the show is that if though Hogan and the WWF have parted company, when Hulk Hogan talks, he still uses Vince McMahon's words and phrases directly. "I'm 40 going on 18, turning negatives into positives." He said WCW places more emphasis on athletics than WWF. When the host said that pro wrestling was entertainment, choreography, a show, Hogan said that wrestlers don't go out to hurt each other but they are great athletes and do get hurt. The host brought up steroids and Hogan pretty much said it was the only dark cloud over his career but that it was in the past. Due to Hogan, WCW now has the advantage over WWF for the first time when it comes to the ability to garner mainstream publicity leading to its major shows. The publicity was enough for the WWF to produce its own retaliatory piece, which started airing the same day of Hogan's press conference on WCW, attempting to equate Hogan, shown doing a leg drop on a tape made to look grainy and ancient, as equivalent to out-of-date items such as broken-down 1920s cars and airplanes, and showing the current WWF crop of headliners as being equivalent to 1990s cars and airplanes. Some later airings of a similar piece saw Hogan edited out, coining a new phrase that this is the new generation WWF, not living in the past, a direct shot at the amount of publicity WCW has garnered from Hogan. There is double irony in that. First, this was the same tact, running videos berating the top guys of the other group, that Ole Anderson's Georgia Championship Wrestling and Bill Watts' Mid-South Wrestling took in the early stages of the wrestling war against Titan Sports 10 years ago. The other irony is that the most interesting matchup on the June 19 WWF pay-per-view show involves two wrestlers, Roddy Piper and Jerry Lawler, who are both older than Hogan. It came off as a sign that while many people believe in the long run WCW has made a mistake in banking the entire company on Hogan, its leading competitor is clearly worried, and worried about something that at this point in time should be the least of its worries. Brian Lee's television debut as Ted DiBiase's Undertaker took place on the WWF Superstar syndicated show over the weekend in an interview segment where the original Undertaker, Mark Calloway's voice was dubbed over Lee's voice in studio to make television viewers believe it was the real McCoy. The makeup artists and those in television production deserve real praise for this one, because aside from the small percentage of fans who know better, I doubt anyone else would even suspect this was a different person playing the part. Lee looked a lot more like Undertaker than Jim Hellwig looked like Ultimate Warrior when he came back. While the interview on a Heartbreak Hotel segment on Live was a giveaway with Lee's voice, that problem was cleared up by the time the show aired. It isn't known when Mark Calloway will return to confront Lee playing the role. The King of the Ring pay-per-view show seems too rushed. The angle pretty well has to be on television by early July since the pizza boxes advertising the match will already be public by then. I guess it should be at the upcoming TV tapings. Speaking of TV tapings for WWF, we had incorrect dates in last week's Observer because we were working from a WWF schedule that has since been changed. There were no tapings done June 13th to June 15th, and instead the schedule is for Raw to be taped on June 20th in White Plains, New York, and the Cindy's on June 21st in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania and June 22nd in Poughkeepsie. After that, television taping dates are July 4th in Ocean City, Maryland, Raw, July 5th in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania and July 6th is Bushkill, Pennsylvania, and July 25th in Youngstown, Ohio, Raw, July 26th in Wheeling, West Virginia and July 27th in Cincinnati. The August tapings will be in Maine. Jushin Liger, Keiichi Yamada, captured the 1994 top of the Super Junior tournament, defeating Michinoku Pro Wrestling's Super Delphin, Hiro Wakita, in the tournament final 6-13 in Osaka before a turnaway sellout crowd of 6,850 at Furitsu Gym. Liger won the main event match on the show in 1829 with a Super Fisherman Buster, Fisherman Suplex dropped straight down into a Brain Buster from off the top rope, for his second tournament win in the last 3 years. Both the final and the tournament itself were said to have been better than they looked to be on paper going in. Liger pinned El Samurai, Osamu Matsuda, to win the 1992 version of the tournament. Wild Pegasus, Chris Benoit, who tied for third this year after winning the one-night Super J Cup on April 16, was the 1993 tournament winner pinning Samurai. The final night of the round-robin was June 10 in Kochi, with Delphin, Liger, Dean Malenko, Black Tiger, Eddie Guerrero, and Pegasus all going into the final day with 6-3 records. Since Malenko vs. Delphin and Liger vs. Pegasus were scheduled that night, it guaranteed both winners a spot in the finals. Tiger was guaranteed a spot in the finals as well if he defeated Shinjiro Otani. As it turned out, Delphin and Liger each won their match, while Otani upset Tiger, making it a two-man final. just as the Super J Cup elevated Michinoku Pro's great Sasuke's position with the casual wrestling fans of Japan when he defeated Liger in the semifinals before losing in the finals. The new star created by this tournament was Delphin, who was in first place in the tournament much of the way, and also upped the level of Otani, who along with Satoshi Kojima, who wasn't in the tournament, is the best of New Japan's younger wrestlers, as he scored upsets over Pegasus and Tiger. Liger, who was instrumental in putting the two tournaments together, wanted to elevate Michinoku Pro wrestlers Sasuke, Delphin, Jinsei Shinzaki and Sato to a top level to create new viable challengers for his IWGP Junior Heavyweight title. Shinzaki appears to no longer be a part of the plans since he's headed to the WWF in the fall. But Sasuke, Delphin and Sato will probably work with Liger starting at the G1 Climax tournament at Sumo Hall in August. Final standings were, 1. Liger 8-3, 2. Delphin 7-4, 3. Samurai, Pegasus, Tiger and Malenko 6-4, 7. Otani and David Finlay 4-6, 9. Tokumitsu Ishizawa 3-7, 10. Takamichinoku 2-8, 11. Masayoshi Motegi 1-9. The Union of Pro Wrestling Force International's Summer Best in the World 94 tournament comes down to a rematch between Super Vader and Nobuhiko Takada. The semi-finals, held before a full house of 16,500 fans with thousands turned away at Tokyo's Budokan Hall, saw Vader defeat Kiyoshi Tamura via knockout in 7 minutes 14 seconds and Takada make Gary Albright submit to a short arm scissors in 16 minutes 36 seconds. Vader and Takada's previous meeting, on December 6 at the outdoor Jingu Stadium under winter weather conditions in Tokyo for Takada's U.W.F.I. World Heavyweight title, which Takada won via submission, drew a turnaway crowd of 46,168 fans and a gate well in excess of $2 million, the second largest in history for so-called shoot-style pro wrestling. The match was billed as a battle of world heavyweight champions, since Vader held the WCW title at the time of the match. The rematch and tournament final on August 18 at Budokan Hall, is expected to sell out almost immediately after tickets go on sale. The crowd, consisting almost exclusively of both dating-age men and women in their late teens and early 20s, went wild when Takada, who has gained additional sports celebrity status of late as the anchor on Tokyo's CH6 Saturday sports show, came back from being almost knocked out by a variety of brutal suplexes by Albright, with fast high and low kicks setting up the submission win. Earlier Tamura gained an early advantage over Vader with fast stiff kicks which caused the crowd to go wild, but Vader's brutal head slaps and forearms to the head set up his winning via knockout after a powerbomb in a match that contained virtually no wrestling holds. Both matches had great crowd reactions and were said to be brutal encounters, but there wasn't a lot of wrestling in either semifinal. Albright used some amateur wrestling takedowns and suplexes, but the much smaller Takada relied mainly on kicks for offense. Based on our reports, the best match on the show was a doubles match third from the top due to the work of Soviet Viktor Zangiev, who teamed with Salman Hashimakov to defeat Yoji Angio and Kazuo Yamazaki. The top matches aired June 27 on television in Japan. An item which surprisingly caused some controversy among readers at Slamboree was the induction of the assassin, Jody Hamilton, into the Hall of Fame. Hamilton, who besides being an on-again, off-again manager with no storyline given to his comings and goings with WCW and a member of the front office, is also the father of current referee Nick Patrick and brother of former headliner Larry Missouri Muller Hamilton. For a little historical perspective, the Masked Assassins, Tom Renesto and Hamilton, were a top heel tag team, who wrestled on and off in Georgia from the early 60s until the early 70s, holding the Georgia tag team belts on numerous occasions. When Renesto retired, the rumor Hamilton ate him is of course false, and Hamilton, known in those days as Assassin No. 2, although later simply as the Assassin, became a single. In the early 80s throughout the southern regional offices, Assassin would become Assassin No. 1 and take younger wrestlers, Randy Cully, Roger Smith and Hercules Hernandez immediately come to mind, and reform the legendary Assassins tag team. By this point, he was mid-card wrestler and they were a mid-card tag team, and by the late 80s simply worked the smaller Georgia independent shows. My first recollection of Hamilton, who in his prime in the 60s had a tough guy reputation, was in the 70s on his first run through Florida and his initial feud with Dusty Rhodes. As he remained throughout his career, he was an exceptional heel interview and had a knack for portraying a menacing figure. In the ring, at least by that time, he didn't do much, relying largely for a loaded headbutt gimmick as his finisher and his interviews as his heat-getter. In later years, he did even less in the ring, but always did the menacing interviews. While he was undeniably a star and a headliner for 2 decades, he was not a Buddy Rogers or a Vern Gagne or a Lou Thesz or even a Wahoo McDaniel when it comes to being an international headliner and drawing card. In The Observer, I jokingly questioned the pick, jokingly because Wrestling Hall of Fames aren't meant to be taken seriously, and obviously he got the pick because he's worked for the company for several years and he was far more of a wrestling star during his active career than Arnold Skaaland, but was hardly a Ric Flair of her era, saying that he didn't even have a poem written about him. That was an inside baseball reference to its Hall of Fame. Many have argued for decades that Joe Tinker, and to a lesser extent Johnny Evers and Frank Chance, geez, are we getting off the track or what? But trust me, it makes sense at the end, who were a double-play combination for great Chicago Cubs teams from 1906 to 1910 are in the Hall of Fame not because they were Hall of Fame caliber players, they were considered good but not great players, and Tinker, an average-hitting good fielding shortstop, is considered one of the most questionable choices in the Hall of Fame, but because of a famous 1910 Franklin P. Adams poem called Tinker to Evers to Chance, a poem that is believed to have spawned the musical Take Me Out to the Ballgame and has remained a part of baseball folklore to this day. Anyway, to correct this glaring error, since we can't vote Jody Hamilton out of the Wrestling Hall of Fame once inducted, we have to do the next best thing. Create a poem about him. Thanks to readers Pete Theophall and Charlie Gavinelli for coming up with this masterpiece that parents can recite to their kids after bringing them to Cooperstown, Canton or behind the cotton candy stand at Disney World, or wherever WCW's corporate offices and Hall of Fame display center winds up, for the next half-century. He's a fearsome masked figure. All you need to do is look. 5 feet wide from every side. More chins than a Chinese phone book. His name is very fitting. Many wrestlers he's made pay the price. But it also describes his physique. Because ass appears in it twice. When he first came out with his old mask, I laughed so hard I thought I'd gag. His head looked like 10 pounds of beef, stuffed into a small 2-pound bag. Dusty Rhodes tried to pull off his mask. He pulled and tugged it to and fro. Over the mic, you could hear Jesse say, "Hey, shove on knee, just 2 chins to go." He would never wear a blue suit and stand in the street in one place, for fear that someone by mistake would put their mail right into his face, making a mark in the wrestling world. That was his childhood dream. But little did he realize, he could do it as his own tag team. He used to have a tag team partner. Twin assassins in masked disguise. Some fans say he had his partner for lunch one day. And what's why he's now twice his original size. He hollers at the ringside fans. Calls them a bunch of creeps. He doesn't know that they're all laughing. 'Cause when he walks backwards he beeps. Now Vader can pull off a suplex, since he's agile, balanced and strong. But to belly the assassin, he'd need arms that are 10 feet long. Has anyone gotten any poems about chauffeurs ready? Vampiro Canadiense, Ian Hodgkinson, who just a few years ago was the hottest drawing card in Mexico and one of the highest paid wrestlers in the world, is looking into jumping from MLL to AAA. The move has been discussed behind the scenes quite a bit over the past week, and there is talk it could come as soon as August. Vampiro, who had done very little wrestling in his native Canada before showing up in Mexico City with virtually no experience or concept of what was being done, became an immediate sensation, particularly with women, because of his unique rockstar look. He was in the right place at the right time, because he got over just as wrestling was beginning its television run in Mexico City. For years the groups operated with no television, and business took off. In 1992, when several of MLL's biggest drawing cards left when Booker Antonio Pena formed AAA, Vampiro became unquestionably the biggest drawing card that remained with the promotion. However, the crowds have fallen since that point, as has his individual popularity. In the fall of 1992, Vampiro was able to draw crowds in the 4,000 range twice in Los Angeles, while on the 2 shows he appeared on in Los Angeles recently, they drew about 3,300 and 1,500, and it was Ryota Jalisco Jr., and not Vampiro, who got the biggest crowd reaction. Negotiations are going on to bring him into AAA by August, perhaps to debut on the next California tour, which would be a huge story in Mexico. Since everyone who follows the Mexican business closely knows about the personal animosity between Vampiro and AAA's Coronel Barbaro, there is talk of starting him off as a heel to take advantage of the obvious matchup, although many question in that role whether he'd be able to surpass Cien Caras and Love Machine on the heel side of AAA. What could tie up the deal is that MLL promoter Francisco Paco Alonso owns the rights to the name Vampiro Canadiense and Canadian Vampire in both the United States and Mexico, and owns 15% of his contract. At the very least it may make it necessary to change his name should he jump, which would pose a major problem since he's so well associated with the Vampire name. Results: 522 Ciudad Juarez, AAA, 10,000 sellout. Solar and Samurai and Fantasma B Ice Killer and Rambo and Espondo Jr. 1 star, Fuerza Guerrera and Juventud Guerrera and Picudo B Tony Arce and Rocco Valente and Volcano 3 stars, Mexican Trios titles, El Hijo del Santo and Angel Azteca and Super Muñeco B Los Payasos to win titles 4 stars, Coronel Barbaro and Perro Aguayo and Tinieblas Jr. and Heavy Metal B El Satanico and Love Machine and Eddie Guerrero and Chicano Power 23072 2 3/4 stars. 525 Tlanepantla, UWA/Triple Double Power, Gallego and Mr. Condor B Blackbirds 1 and 2, Rambo and Ice Killer and El Hijo del Diablo B The King I and the Patriot and Transformer, Kendo, Perro Aguayo and Solar and Angel Azteca B Negro Navarro and El Signo and Rocky Santana DQ, UWA Welterweight title vs Mexican Welterweight title, El Hijo del Santo B Karloff Lagarde Jr. to win UWA title. 527 Arena Coliseo in Mexico City, EMLL, 5,500 sellout, Olympico and Olympus B Kundra and El Cofre, Brazo del Futuro and Super Brazo and Brazo de Platino B Reyes Velas and Escudero Rojo and Rey Bucanero, Moger and Javier Cruz and Cacho Mendoza B Ciclone Ramirez and Pantera 2 and Hayabusa, Dandy and La Fiera and Apollo Dantes B Felino and Jacques Maiden Mocho Coda 2 stars, Atlantis and Ultimo Dragon and Vampiro Canadiense B Emilio Charles Jr. and Sangre Chicana and Bestia Salvaje 3 stars. 527 Netza Coyote, UWA/Triple Double Power, Vicky Carranza and Pantera Serena B La Gata and La Indomable, Zafiro and Briate and Diamante de Nuevo Audas and Seminarista and Gamma, Angel Azteca and Tiger Man and Super Muñeco B Principe Maya and Perro Silva and Karloff Lagarde Jr. DQ, Dos Caras and Gran Hamada and Ruben Juarez Jr. B Tony Arce and Rocco Valente and Volcano, UWA HWT title, Connect B Chicano Power. 529 Mexico City Pista Arena Revolucion, EMLL, Orito and Saigoncito Dragon B Fulanito and Damiencito El Guerrero, Archangel de la Muerte and Guerrero de la Muerte and Cadaver de Ultratumba B Solar 2 and Aguila Solitario and Onita Jr., Akihito Ichihara, Felino and Halcon Negro Jr. and Espectro Jr. B Pantera 2 and Mascara Magica and Chamaco Volks, Dandy and Rayo de Jalisco Jr. and Ringo Mendoza B Javier Cruz and Bestia Salvaje and Emilio Charles Jr., Mask vs. Mask, Justiciero B Draco, unmasked as Martin Navarro, younger brother of Negro Navarro. 6-1 Kamloops, BC, West Coast Championship Wrestling, Timothy Flowers B Brett Como, Flowers B Trash Man, Michelle Star B Johnny Canuck. 6 Halves Kelowna, BC, West Coast Championship Wrestling, Elton Stanton B Trash Man, Michelle Star B Johnny Canuck, Phil LaFleur, All Japan's Dan Crawford, and Mike Lazansky, who was Canadian Tiger, and Brett Como B Timothy Flowers and JC Ice, Memphis Wrestler, and Midget D1 Battle Royal. 6/3 Halifax, Nova Scotia, WWF, Jeff Jarrett B Doink the Clown, Ray Apollo, WWF Women's Title, Alundra Blaze B Luna Vachon, Duke Dries B Bastion Booger, Bob Backlund B Brooklyn Brawler, Razor Ramon B Jarrett, Smoking Guns B Executioners, Lex Luger B Crush. 6/3 Calgary, Canadian Rocky Mountain Wrestling, Randy Rudd B Johnny Coltrane, Jason Helton B Chris Kramer, Eric Fries B Don McCulloch, Klaus Bruderheim NC Michael Myers, Steve Wild, Steve Gillespie B Sonny Corleone, Katana B Jason the Terrible, Carl Moffat, Brad Young B Steve Rivers. 6/3 Antlers, OK, Power Zone Wrestling Alliance, 50, Tom Jones B The Shadow DQ, Casey Cannon B TNT, Corey Van Klk, Liberty Kid B Shadow, Steve Cox and Jones B Sean Summers and Chains, Butch Reed B Rod Price DQ. 6/3 Vernon, BC, West Coast Championship Wrestling, Elton Stanton B Trash Man, Michelle Star B Johnny Canuck, Mike Lazansky and Brett Como B Timothy Flowers and JC Ice and Midget D1 Battle Royal. 6/4 Citadel, OK, Power Zone Wrestling Alliance, 150, Liberty Kid B TNT, Casey Cannon B The Shadow, Tom Jones B Chains, Steve Cox B Sean Summers, Butch Reed B Rod Price DQ. 6/4 Chase, BC, West Coast Championship Wrestling, Timothy Flowers b. Skull Crusher, Trashman b. Brett Como, Johnny Canuck b. Michelle Starr. 6/5 Oklahoma City, World Class Championship Wrestling, 225, Billy Phoenix b. TNT DQ, Wild Maverick and Liberty Kid b. Shadow and Chains, Casey Cannon DDQ The Panther, Rick Garrett b. Rick Valentine, Tom Jones b. Country Boy Chopper DQ, Kevin Von Erich b. Sean Summers. 6/5 Portage, Wisconsin, Nuage Wrestling, Jawbreaker Jones b. JB Trask, The Punisher b. Private Moondog, Chris Zarna b. Mr. Dynamic, Brett Stryker b. Jerry Lynn, Tony the Annihilator 1 Battle Sport Bout. 6/5 Foul Furious Texas, Gulf Coast Championship Wrestling, 41, Chuck West b. Diablo Rojo, J.R. Reyes b. Master of Style, Hellbilly Bob b. Lightning Mike, Ghost Tiger b. Destroyer, Paul Galvin b. The Spoiler, Ken Johnson. 6/6 Chiba, New Japan, 3000 Sellout, Tokumitsu Ishizawa and Yuji Nagata b. Dean Malenko and Tatsuhito Takaiwa, Takamichi Noku b. Masayoshi Motegi, Black Tiger b. Wild Pegasus, El Samurai b. Super Delphin, Jushin Liger b. Shinjiro Otani, Keiji Muto and Masacho Ono b. Mike Enos and David Finlay, Riki Choshu and Tatsumi Fujinami and Akira Nagami and Takayuki Izuka b. Akitoshi Saito and Kunyaki Kobayashi and Shiro Koshinaka and Kengo Kimura, Hawk and Power Warrior b. Brad Armstrong and Scott Norton, Michiyoshi Ohara and Tatsutoshi Goto and Great Kabuki b. Shina Hashimoto and Hiroshi Hayes and Satoshi Kojima. 6/6 Memphis, Aswa, 800, Reggie b. Fine b. Jerry Faith, Anthony Michaels b. Leon Downs, Mike Samples b. Brian Logan, Brian Keys, Michaels and Faith and Logan b. Samples and Downs and Fine, Aswa Tag Title, The Eliminators b. Jeff Gaylord and Spellbinder, Doug Gilbert b. Wolfie D., Aswa Title, Dream Machine b. Brian Christopher to win title, Unified Title, Jerry Lawler b. Bam Bam Bigelow DQ, Wolfie D1 Blindfold Battle Royal. 6/6 Tokyo Korakuen Hall, War, 2000, Michiko Nagashima b. Mizuki Endo, Harley Saito and Miki Handa b. Eagle Sawai and Carol Midori, Ultimo Dragon and Yuji Yasirioka b. Arashi and Yaba, Hideo Takayama, Takashi Ishikawa and Vampiro Candience b. Yamato and Ashura Hara, Kendo Nagasaki b. Nobukazu Harai, Das Karas b. Cuban Assassin, Genichiro Tenryu and Koki Kitahara and Animal Hamaguchi b. Gedo and Jado and Hiramichi Fuyuki. 6/7 Loudon, Tennessee, SMW TV Taping, 400, SMW Tag Title, Rock and Roll Express b. Brian Lee and Chris Condito DQ, Thrill Seekers b. Chris Hamrick and Larry Santo, Jake Roberts b. James Atkins, SMW TV Title, Tracy Smothers b. Kendo the Samurai, Bobby Blaze, to win title, Scott and Steve Armstrong b. Santo and Atkins, SMW TV Title, Smothers b. Hamrick, Dirty White Boy b. Joe Kazana DQ, Rules Match, Timothy Welby Landstorm DQ, Rock and Roll Express b. Kazana and Hamrick, Bruiser Bedlam b. Santo, SMW TV Title, Smothers b. Killer Kyle, Thrill Seekers b. Atkins and Santo, SMW TV Title, Smothers b. Stephen Dunn. 6/7 Marumori, All Japan Women, Kumiko Maekawa b. Chaparita Osari, Tomoko Watanabe b. Ri Tamata, Etsuko Mita b. Kaoru Ito, Bull Nakano and Yumiko Hata b. Manami Toyota and Takako Inoue, Toshio Yamada b. Mima Shimoda, Asia Kong and Saki Hasegawa b. Suzuka Minami and Kyoko Inoue. 6/8 Takamatsu, New Japan, 2950 Sellout, Yuji Nagata b. Tatsuhito Takaiwa, David Finlay and Black Tiger b. Takamichi Noku and Shinjiro Otani, Tokumitsu Ishizawa b. Dean Malenko, Wild Pegasus b. Super Delphin, El Samurai b. Jushin Liger, Tatsutoshi Goto and Shiro Koshinaka and Great Kabuki and Kengo Kimura b. Yoshiaki Yatsu and Shinichi Nakano and Hiro Saito and Norio Wanaga, Keiji Muto b. Mike Enos, Akira Nagami and Takayuki Izuka b. Scott Norton and Brad Armstrong, Hiroshi Hayes and Masacho Ono and Shina Hashimoto b. Riki Choshu and Tatsumi Fujinami and Yoshiaki Fujiwara. 6/8 Saomori, All Japan Women, 2260, Ritamata b. Kumiko Maekawa, Kaoru Ito b. Chaparita Osari, Mima Shimoda b. Tomoko Watanabe, Bull Nakano and Yumiko Hata b. Etsuko Mita and Toshio Yamada, Asia Kong b. Suzuka Minami, Minami Toyota and Takako Inoue b. Saki Hasegawa and Kyoko Inoue. 6/9 Sehime, New Japan, 1700, Dean Malenko b. Takamichi Noku, Wild Pegasus b. Masayoshi Motegi, Jushin Liger b. Tokumitsu Ishizawa, Black Tiger and Super Delphin B. Shinjiro Otani and Yuji Nagata, Yoshiaki Yatsu and Hiro Saito and Norio Wanaga B. Akitoshi Saito and Tatsutoshi Goto and Kengo Kimura, Hiroshi Hayes and Masa Saito and Shina Hashimoto B. Scott Norton and Mike Ennis and Brad Armstrong, Keiji Muto and Masa Chono B. Yoshiaki Fujiwara and Osamu Kido, Riki Choshu and Tatsumi Fujinami and Akira Nagami and Takayuki Izuka B. Great Kabuki and Shiro Koshinaka and Kunyaki Kobayashi and Michiyoshi Ohara. 6/9 Tamako Mai, All Japan Women, 2260, Chaparita Osari B. Kumiko Maekawa, Handicap Match, Suzuka Minami B. Tomoko Watanabe and Ritamata, Kyoko Inoue and Takako Inoue B. Kaoru Ito and Saki Hasegawa, Toshio Yamada B. Mima Shimoda, Yumiko Hata and Manami Toyota B. Asia Kong and Atsuko Mitai 2019. 6/9 Tokyo Korakuen Hall, LLPW, 2100 Sellout, Gen Yukari B. Mikiko Futagami, Nori Yotadano B. Michiko Omakai, Miki Handa B. Otaku Hozumi, Yashakurana and Michika Nagashima B. Rumi Kazama and Harley Saito, Shinobu Kandori and Mizuki Endo B. Eagle Sawai and Carol Midori. 6/9 Maryville, Tennessee, All-State Wrestling, Black Shadow and Shogun B. Russell Thompson and Junior Wright, Billy Marshall B. Wayne Spain, Bobby B. and Thompson B. Charlie Long and Wright, Tony Pritchard B. Roadhouse Red, Rick Connors and Lone Star N.C. Marshall and Lynn Montana, Long 1 Battle Royal. 6/10 Tokyo Budokan Hall, U, W, F, I, 16,500 Sellout, Bochao A-kun B. Gary Hadwin, Hiromitsu Kaneara B. Tom Burton, Billy Scott B. Yoshihiro Takayama, Steve Nelson and Gene Leidick B. Kazushi Sakuraba and Masahito Kakihara, Naoki Sano B. Tatsuo Nakano, Salman Hashimakov and Victor Zangief B. Kazuo Yamazaki and Yoji Anshio, Best in the World Tournament Semifinals, Super Vader B. Kiyoshi Tamura, Nobuhiko Takada B. Gary Albright. 6/10 Pittsburgh, WWF WrestleMania Revenge Tour, 5,500, Doink the Clown B. Jeff Jarrett, WWF Women's Title, Alundra Blaze B. Luna Vachon, Quang B. 123 Kid, Lex Luger B. Crush 2245, IRS B. Tatanka Core, Yokozuna B. Typhoon, WWF Title, Bret Hart B. Owen Hart 22 minutes 22 seconds. 6/10 Kochi, New Japan, 2200, Akitoshi Saito and Michiyoshi Ohara B. Tatsuhito Takaiwa and Yuji Nagata, Tokumitsu Ishizawa B. Masayoshi Motegi, Super Delphin B. Dean Malenko, Shinjiro Otani B. Black Tiger, Jushin Liger B. Wild Pegasus, Kunyaki Kobayashi and Great Kabuki and Shiro Koshinaka and Kengo Kimura B. Norio Wanaga and Hiro Saito and Shinichi Nakano and Yoshiaki Yatsu, Scott Norton and Mike Ennis and Brad Armstrong B. Tada Yasuda and Osamu Kido and Tatsumi Fujinami, Hiroshi Hayes and Masa Chono and Shina Hashimoto and Keiji Muto B. Riki Choshu and Yoshiaki Fujiwara and Akira Nagami and Takayuki Izuka. 6/10 Sapporo, All Japan Women, 3,460, Chaparita Osari B. Kumiko Maekawa, Kyoko Inoue and Ritamata B. Tomoko Watanabe and Takako Inoue, Yumiko Hata B. Suzuka Minami, Asia Kong and Bull Nakano B. Mimishimoto and Etsuko Mita, WWWA Tag Title 2 of 3 Falls, Minami Toyota and Toshio Yamada B. Saki Hasegawa and Kaoru Ito 36 minutes 53 seconds. 6/10 Paintsville, Kentucky, SMW, 450, Thrill Seekers B. Stephen Dunn and Chris Condito, Dirty White Boy B. Kendo the Samurai, Bobby Blaze, Coal Miners Glove Match, Bruiser Bedlam B. Tracy Smothers, Pile Driver Match for SMW Tag Title, Brian Lee and Chris Condito NC Rock and Roll Express. 6/10 Serena, Mexico and Mexico City, EMLL, Prelim results unavailable, Ringo Mendoza and La Fiera and Dandy B. Dr. Wagner Jr. and Gran Marcus Jr. and El Hijo del Gladiador, Vampiro Canadiense and Ultimo Dragon and Atlantis B. Samson Fuyuki and Emilio Charles Jr. and Pierre Alt Jr., Hair vs. Hair, Javier Cruz B. Ciclone Ramirez. 6/10 Dallas Sportatorium, GWF, 700, Bo Vegas B. Stephen Dane, Chaz Taylor B. Alex Porto DQ, Devin Michaels B. Nick Golden, Mark Valiant B. Rod Price DQ, Chris Adams and Action Jackson NC Iceman King Parsons and Black Prince. 6/10 Jackson, Michigan, Midwest Territorial Wrestling, 225, Bobo Brazil Jr. B. Muhammad Saad DQ, Sean Casey B. Randy Rogers, Denny Cass B. Steve Nixon, Brazil Jr. and Andy Fish B. Saad and Chris Carter DQ, Doink the Clown, Matt Osborne, B. Johnny Paradise, Mike Kelly B. Scott Stevens. 6/10 Columbia, South Carolina, Indiana, 100, Southern Patriot B. J.D. Bledsoe, Steve Douglas B. Johnny Flex, Candy Divine B. Robbie Rage, Atomic Playboys B. The Eagle, Jackie Fulton, and Chip the Firebreaker, Curtis Thompson, Demolition X B. Greg Valentine DQ, Wahoo McDaniel B. Iron Sheik. 6/10 Delaware City, WWA, Ray Odyssey B. Axel Rotten, AC Connor B. Rambling Rich, Father Ed B. Gus the Greek, Spiders B. Super Jocks, Ed Atlas and Wayne Gill, Frank Finnegan B. King Kong Bundy. 6/10 Portage La Prairie, Manitoba, West 4 Wrestling Association, 550, EZ Rider B. Red Bastian Jr., Stan Saxon B. Gene Swan, Brian Jewell B. Robbie Royce, Chi Cruz B. Kerry Brown, Rick Martel B. The Natural, Don Kelly. 6/10 West Virginia, World League Wrestling, 100, Scotty McKeever B. Mad Dog, J.W. Idol B. Super Mario, Buddha B. Punisher, Rick Firestone B. Keith Davis, and Firestone B. Moose and Chris Hamrick, Tommy Rich B. The Nightmare, Ted Allen, Lord Zoltan B. Hamrick. 6/10 Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia, TriStar Wrestling, Jimmy Hodge B. Jamie Strong, Frankie Lee B. Joel Travis, Sam Colt B. Mr. Vane, Jet Set B. Ken Arden and Roger Sartain, Richie Dye B. Larry Santana, Larry Santo. 6/11 Niagara Falls, New York, WWF WrestleMania Revenge Tour, 5,000, 123 Kid B. Quang 3 stars, WWF Women's Title, Alundra Blaze B. Luna Vachon 1½ star, Jeff Jarrett B. Doink the Clown 2 stars, Lex Luger B. Crush 1/2 1 star, IRS B. Tatanka DQ 1 star, Yokozuna B. Typhoon Dud, WWF Title, Bret Hart B. Owen Hart 2½ stars. 6/11 Richmond, Virginia, WWF, 1000, Smoking Guns B. Executioners 2½ stars, Mabel B. The Genius, Lenny Poffo, Dud, Nikolai Volkov B. Sparky Plug 1/2 1 star, Razor Ramon B. The Barbarian 2 stars, Duke Dries B. Atom Bomb 2½ stars, WWF Tag Title, Head Shrinkers B. Quebecers 3 stars. 6/11 Tsuyama, New Japan, 2720 Sellout, Shinichi Nakano and Norio Onaga B. Jushin Liger and Yuji Nagata, Yoshiaki Yatsu and Hiro Saito B. Michiyoshi Ohara and Kunyaki Kobayashi, Akira Nagami and Takayuki Iizuka B. Tadao Yasuda and Yoshiaki Fujiwara, Scott Norton and Mike Ennis and Brad Armstrong B. Masa Chono and Keiji Muto and Masa Saito, Hiroshi Hayes and Shina Hashimoto B. Great Kabuki and Kengo Kimura, Riki Choshu and Tatsumi Fujinami and Osamu Kido B. Tatsutoshi Goto and Shiro Koshinaka and Akatoshi Saito. 6/11 Morristown, Tennessee, SMW, 500, Thrill Seekers B. Stephen Dunn and Brian Logan, Brian Keys, Dirty White Boy B. Kendo the Samurai, Coal Miners Glove Handicap Match, Tracy Smothers B. Killer Kyle and Jim Cornette, Pile Driver Match for SMW Tag Title, Brian Lee and Chris Condito NC Rock and Roll Express. 6/11 Hakodate, All Japan Women, 2850, Kumiko Maekawa B. Ritamata, Tomoko Watanabe B. Chaparita Asari, Mima Shimoda and Atsuko Mita B. Suzuka Minami and Kaoru Ito, Minami Toyota B. Takako Inoue, All Pacific Title, Kyoko Inoue B. Saki Hasegawa, Asia Kong and Yumiko Hata B. Bull Nakano and Toshio Yamada. 6/11 Trujillo Alto, PR, WWC, 3000, Sabu, Not Original, B. Cyclone, Etki Malumba, Giant Kimala 2 aka Ben Peacock, B. Pool Garcito, El Profe B. El Exotico, Mohammed Hussein, Lou Fabiano, and Tahitian Warrior, Lloyd Anoya, B. Lale and Al Bronco, WWC TV Title, Carlitos B. Doomsday, Glenn Jacobs, DQ, North American Title, Eddie Gilbert B. Ray Gonzalez DQ, Dutch Mantelter Hurricane Castillo Jr. 6/11 Lincoln Park, Michigan, Midwest Championship Wrestling, 250, Tommy Wonder B. Rico Rodriguez, Judge Red B. Woody Lee, The Bug B. Hector Hatchet DQ, Johnny Wildside and the Kodiak B. Scott D'Amore and Jake Steele, Death Dealer B. Mickey Doyle, The Sheik B. Malcolm Monroe Core, Sabu B. 2 Cold Scorpio 3½ stars. 6/11 West Hartford, Connecticut, National Wrestling Federation, 150, USA Express B. Executioners, Jules Strongbow B. Bounty Hunter, Wendy Richter B. Angel of Death, Chain Match, Ivan Koloff B. Skull Von Cruss, Honky Tonk Man B. Tony Atlas, Von Cruss 1 Battle Royal. 6/11 Port Huron, Michigan, Midwest Territorial Wrestling, 350, Sean Casey B. Randy Rogers, Mike Kelly B. Scott Stevens, Steve Nixon B. Jake LeDuc, Road Warrior Hawk and Bobo Brazil Jr. B. Chris Carter and Mohammed Saadkor, Missing Link, Byron Robertson, Original, B. Denny Cass, Doink the Clown, Matt Osborne, B. Johnny Paradise. 611 Cloverdale, BC, West Coast Championship Wrestling, Trashman B. Dylan Powers, Rocky Delisera B. Buddy Wayne, Michelle Star B. Johnny Canuck, Firefighter Adrian B. Randy Tyler Core, Dobie Gillis DDQ Timothy Flowers. 611 Knoxville, Southeastern Championship Wrestling, Jody Rivers B. Eddie Bruiser, Mad Dog Stuffy B. Stormtrooper, Iron Man B. Sheik White, Mike Powers B. Bam Bam Christian, Steve Flynn B. Mongolian Stormper DQ, Keith Hart and Johnny Rayner B. Chris Powers and Deke Rivers. 611 Cleveland, Cleveland All Pro Wrestling, 100, Lou Marconi B. Frank Stiletto, Bodacious B. Kenny Hurricane, Stiletto B. Ninja, Thunder Morgan B. Jimmy Lee. 612 Speckley West Virginia, SMW, 350, Thrill Seekers B. Stephen Dunn and Brian Logan, Dirty White Boy B. Kendo the Samurai, Coal Miners Glove Match, Tracy Smothers B. Killer Kyle, Pile Driver Match for SMW Tag Title, Brian Lee and Chris Condito NC Rock and Roll Express. 6/12 Kofu, FMW, 3500 Sellout, Gasaku Goshigawara B. Mr. Chin, Koji Nakagawa and Tetsuhiro Kuroda B. Masato Tanaka and Goshigawara, Mitsuhiro Matsunaga and Katsutoshi Niyama B. Battle Ranger and Damien, Combat Toyota and Crusher Maidamari and Shark Tsuchiya and Sapuri Mac B. Megumi Kudo and Miwasato and Yuki Nabeno and Nurse Nakamura, Big Titan, Rick Bogner, and Ricky Fuji NC Hisakatsu Oi and Goro Tsurumi, Tarzan Gotobi Dr. Luther, Len St. Clair, No Rope Barbed Wire Barricade Double Hell Death Match, Atsushi Onita and Samba Asako and Mr. Ganasuke B. Mr. Pogo and the Gladiator, Mike Alfonso, and Hideki Hasaka. 6/12 Matsumaya, All Japan Women, 1720, Prelim Results Unavailable, Yumiko Hata B. Tomoko Watanabe, Takako Inoue B. Kaoru Ito, Asia Kong and Suzuka Minami B. Kyoko Inoue and Toshio Yamada. 6/12 Hollywood California, Hollywood Heavyweight Wrestling, Kamara B. Roar 2000, Stefan De Leon B. Benson Lee, Bubba Storm B. Spike Contio, The Pulverizer B. Alex Knight, Peter Maivia Jr., No Relation, Real Name Joe Palumbo Jr., Beat Lawlock, Knight B. Pulverizer. 6/13 Osaka Furitsu Gym, New Japan, 6850 Sellout, Yuji Nagata B. Tatsuhito Takaiwa, Michioshi Ohara and Great Kabuki B. Osamu Kido and Tadao Yasuda, Black Tiger and Dean Malenko and Wild Pegasus B. Al Samurai and Shinjiro Otani and Tokumitsu Ishizawa, Akitoshi Saito and Tatsutoshi Goto and Shiro Koshinaka and Kengo Kimura B. Yoshiaki Yatsu and Norio Wanaga and Hiro Saito and Shinichi Nakano, Rick and Scott Steiner B. Scott Norton and Mike Enos, Power Warrior and Hiroshi Hayes B. Akira Nagami and Takayuki Izuka, Tatsumi Fujinami B. Keiji Muto, Masachono and Shina Hashimoto B. Yoshiaki Fujiwara and Riki Trushu, Top of Super Junior Tournament Final, Jushin Liger B. Super Delphin to win tournament. 6/13 Albany, Kentucky, SMW, 300, Thrill Seekers B. Stephen Dunn and Chris Condito, Dirty White Boy B. Kendo the Samurai, Coal Miners Glove Match, Tracy Smothers B. Killer Kyle, Pile Driver Match for SMW Tag Title, Brian Lee and Chris Condito NC Rock and Roll Express. Special thanks to Brian Hildebrand, Stuart Kemp, James Titus, Bob Koenig, Steve Dr. Lucha Sims, Bill Needham, Dan Riley, Rich Garcia, John Lanigan, Adam Kane, Gary Woronchuk, Norm Connors, Jesse Money, Rick Davis, Dan Farron, Scott Kramer, Brian Hildebrand, Jeff Sharkey, Steve Johnson, John Muse, Corey Van Kluk, Norm Matthews, Joe Aviolo. Japanese Television Rundown. 5/21 New Japan, 1. Rick Rude pinned Sting to win the WCW International title in 22 minutes 48 seconds. Kind of strange how by the time the match aired, everything about it had been negated. This was a weird match in that if it had been on a WCW pay-per-view, it would have been considered a very good match, but at the Fukuoka Dome it was out of context since the pacing and style didn't get over in the building. Rude did his self-intro making nasty comments about Japanese, but since this was outside Tokyo, virtually nobody in the building understood what he said and there was no reaction. Who the hell is Lady Love? This time it was Sting who did the endless chinlock. Sting did a big dive over the top rope and Rude landed with his back halfway on the platform and the other half on nothing since it was the edge of the platform which looked like it could have hurt him badly. If Rude claims an injury from that move, his case looks awfully good on tape. Sting suplexed Rude on the ramp and did a clothesline off the top rope onto Rude, who was standing on the ramp. Sting, who really worked his ass off in this match, followed with 2 wind sprint clotheslines. He missed a stinger splash on the floor and crashed into the guardrail. Rude dropped Sting's throat on the guardrail, but in the ring his offensive punches and a bear hug killed the crowd. Finally Rude began spitting and blowing his nose on Sting, which got heat, but the wrong kind of heat for Japan, and Sting came back pulling down Rude's trunks, and Rude took a few big bumps with his trunks down. Sting pressed Rude overhead and threw him on the floor. After a ref bump, Sting went to the top rope to attack Rude on the ramp, but Rude hid behind Lady Love. Rude threw Lady Love into Sting, then hit him with the title belt for a near fall. After a pile driver for another near fall, Rude got the pin with a knee drop off the top rope. This is a hard match to rate because it was a bad match for Japan in so many ways. Our reports from Japan labeled it a dud. You could see why, since they worked with no conception of what doesn't get over where the match was taking place, Rude relying on punches for offense which means nothing, the blowing nose spots, the pulling down trunks spot, ref bump and manager interference, etc. But it was a very good match based on American style and both guys worked really hard. 3 stars, 2. El Gigante made Tadao Yasuda submit to the claw in 3 minutes 51 seconds. Bad match under any style. Yasuda is about 6'5", but looked like a midget next to Gigante. Probably among the worst matches of the year, but at least it was short. 2 stars, 3. Hashimoto regained the IWGP Heavyweight title from Fujinami in 6:04. Hashimoto pretty much just kicked the hell out of Fujinami except for Fujinami getting brief offensive spots. Finally he knocked out Fujinami with a kick to the head and pinned him with a DDT. This was nowhere near the level of their previous match, although what was done was really stiff. Weird to see a world title change that was basically a squash match. 2 stars. 521 All Japan, 1. Mitsuharu Misawa and Kenta Kobashi retained the tag titles, beating Toshiaki Kawada and Akira Tao. The last 21 minutes 30 seconds of this 40-minute 25 seconds match aired and it was a match of the year candidate. Perfect pacing. Super stiff. Great heat. Brutal. Great moves. It was exciting from when TV picked up until the finish. Since the crowd was already hot, apparently what didn't air on television would have only made it seem better. Suffice to say it was loaded with all the expected hot moves and heat going back and forth. There were about 30 near falls or near submissions, most of which looked like they could be the finish, before Kobashi pinned Tao with the moonsault. 5 stars star. 528 New Japan, 1. Super Delphin pinned Taka Michinoku in 11:31 in the Super Junior tournament. Both of these wrestlers are from Michinoku Pro, a tiny regional office that mainly promotes in northeastern Japan that is known for using very small wrestlers who do a combination Japanese lucha style that is very entertaining. This match fit the bill as they did one great spot after another. They probably worked slightly too fast with not enough selling, but what they did was innovative and it got a great response. Michinoku did a springboard plancha, where he changed directions and jumped sideways, crashing onto Delphin on the floor. After a series of near falls, Delphin hit his twisting DDT off the middle rope and did the old monkey special, a German suplex, float over into a second German suplex and floating over into a bridging cradle held by his legs for the pin, all in one move. 4 stars, 2. Dean Malenko pinned El Samurai with a Tiger Driver after Samurai missed a flying senton off the top rope. Only the last minute or so aired. 3. Shinjiro Otani scored the big upset over Wild Pegasus in 10 minutes 36 seconds. Otani is an explosive small wrestler who is going to be the next generation Liger barring injury. For just plain wrestling and nothing else, Pegasus is the best in the business. All kinds of hot moves back and forth until Pegasus went for a suplex, but Otani turned it into a sunset flip for the pin. 4 stars, 4. David Finlay pinned Liger in 10 minutes 15 seconds. This wasn't nearly at the level of the previous match, but still it was solid work with good mat wrestling. Finlay won with a Dr. Bomb, side salto dropped into a power bomb, and it stunned the crowd because there wasn't a build-up for the finish and nobody expected Liger to lose to that move or this individual. 2 3/4 stars, 5. Choshu and Fujinami and Fujiwara beat Hashimoto and Muto and Chono in 12 minutes 22 seconds when Choshu pinned Chono with a lariat. This was a good all-action match with a lot of heat. The younger 3 carried the older 3 into a good main event match, which takes some doing nowadays. 3 1/4 stars. 528 All Japan, 1. Jumbo Tsuruta and Rusher Kimura and Mitsuo Momota beat Masafuchi and Haruka Igan and Mighty Inoue. They only aired a few minutes of this match because it was one of Jumbo's rare appearances in the ring. The place went nuts for everything he did, but he's clearly through physically. Everything he did on offense looked weak, which is exactly the opposite of his entire career. He moved slowly and really had to be carried. He ended up pinning Egan with a Thez press. What aired looked okay in the context of this being a comedy match, too. Stan Hansen and Giant Baba and Takao Omori beat Tom Pritchard and Steve Williams and Johnny Ace. Everyone sold big for Baba. The crowd was mainly into the Hansen-Williams matchups. Although Omori has improved a lot, you can see he's still really green and is actually being pushed too fast as Hansen's regular tag team partner, maybe because he physically resembles Keiji Muto. He is not the wrestler and athlete Muto was at the same stage. This is strange since All Japan is known for, if anything, pushing young guys too slow. Pritchard sold virtually the entire time he was in the ring. Ace is okay, but except for a dearth of foreign talent, it's hard to see why he's all of a sudden getting such a big push. Finally Hansen pinned Pritchard after a lariat. 2 3/4 stars. 6/4 New Japan, 1. Liger and Samurai and Otani and Tokumitsu Ishizawa 1 2/3 falls from the Michinoku quartet of Sato and Terry Boy and Shiryu and Taka Michinoku. This was a very entertaining Japanese lucha-style match and the fans were into the promotion versus promotion feud. The Michinoku guys are so small that Liger looks like a Sherman tank in comparison. After they split falls, they did a sequence of 7 straight dives. Michinoku and Otani both did Eddie Guerrero springboard planches over the guardrail. Shiryu did a tope with a flip in mid-air, the dive made famous by Mexican wrestler Blackman in his prime, while Sato did the Hokuto flip splash, tope con hilo, even better than Hokuto. Finally Liger pinned Michinoku after a Frankensteiner off the top rope. 3 1/2 stars, 2. Pegasus pinned Malenko with a new form of a cradle in 14 minutes 4 seconds. Only the last minute or so aired but it had a lot of heat and appeared to have been a great match. 3. Masayoshi Motegi pinned Finlay with a crucifix in 9 minutes 6 seconds. Only the finish aired here, but it had no heat. 4. Delphin pinned Black Tiger. Crowd was really into this since both men have similar styles. All kinds of near falls with great heat. Tiger used his swinging DDT for a near fall and Delphin came back with the same move for a near fall. Finally Delphin reversed a power bomb into a DDT and scored the pin with a Delphin clutch. 3 3/4 stars. 5. Hashimoto retained the IWGP title pinning Fujiwara after 2 DDTs in 12:15. Fujiwara did nothing but armbars and chokes, but his armbars are over. It was pretty much a nothing match for a world title bout, but there is something about Fujiwara's weird charisma that makes everything he's involved in somehow interesting. 1 1/2 star. Uwa? With crowds starting to fall in the Double Power, Uwa vs AAA shows, they announced the second phase of Double Power starting this week which supposedly will mean more singles matches and more title matches. Kicking off the second phase at El Toreo in Naucalpan, the Uwa's home arena, on June 19 will be a singles match with Connect vs Perro Aguayo for the Double Power Cup, with the story being that each promotion is sending its top gun for the match. I believe this cup was Connect's original idea to allow Aguayo to win it, and thereby enabling Connect not to lose his Uwa heavyweight title to an AAA wrestler, which had been part of the original deal to get Antonio Pena to agree and help Uwa survive by sending wrestlers for the promotion versus promotion shows. We'll have to wait and see if it winds up this way, because Pena will probably want Connect to adhere to the original deal which would wind up with Aguayo eventually taking the strap. Connect vs Cien Caras drew a big house on June 8 in Lapanetla, big being a relative term as this is a weekly Wednesday night town similar to Memphis where usual crowd may be a few hundred but big is 3,000. June 6 in Querétaro for the company's weekly Monday night show with El Signo vs Rambo on top, they didn't draw. Enrique Vera, The Killer and Andy Barrow have returned. EMLL. The return to Arena Mexico on June 10 drew a weak house with Javier Cruz winning the hair vs hair main event beating Ciclone Ramirez. The match was said to have been excellent with all sorts of dives from Hell and Muta vs Hayes level juice. Samson Fuyuki, War's Hiramichi Fuyuki, debuted in the semi-final teaming with Pierre Roth Jr. and Emilio Charles Jr. to loss to Vampiro Canadiense and Ultimo Dragon in Atlantis. Fuyuki sold nothing, even shaking off brutal chair shots. Miguel Perez has jumped back from AAA after only 6 weeks. AAA gave the reason that Perez wasn't good enough to make the grade, but that's obviously ridiculous. While I don't know as a fact this is the reason for Perez being back with this group, It appears relations between AAA and Perez longtime booker Victor Quiñones hit the skids when AAA cancelled Rey Mysterio Jr. and Psicosis from Quiñones' EVO Japan tour, which starts this coming week. The story behind that is that Victor Mar, Black Cat, of New Japan, who had been working until recently with AAA, pretty much tried to dissuade Pena from working with EVO and sending top guys to the group because it would gravely damage those wrestlers' chances of ever working for New Japan. For better or worse, All Japan and New Japan have something of a policy, which exceptions are occasionally but not often made, that if a foreign wrestler has worked for a smaller group, they won't touch that wrestler. So if, for example, Psicosis went on the EVO tour this week, it would make it very hard for New Japan to book him for several years. The 10-year-old son of Mascarada Magica is still missing as of our latest reports and presumed dead. Pedro Septién, the most famous announcer in Mexico, who has been in semi-retirement but has called wrestling for 40 years, officially retired. Mil Mascaras is said to be returning to this office after the World Cup. Press reports on Hayabusa, Eiji Ezaki of FMW, are that he's inexperienced in lucha style but is obviously a great athlete. All Japan. The Misawa Kawada match on June 3, which was the headline story and front cover on both major wrestling weeklies, had a front-page cover huge headline in Weekly Pro Wrestling basically saying Misawa and Kawada go 35 minutes 50 seconds with no rest holds, which is kind of an amazing statement for the cover of a mag with 250,000 circulation. They did an old Crockett TV show on that one, as the match was scheduled to air on television June 4, and they aired the first 23 minutes, and aired the final 13 minutes on June 11. The June 4 show, which aired 1 hour earlier than usual, 1:35 a.m. Saturday night, did a 2.4 rating, its best since the time slot change, going head-to-head with New Japan and beating New Japan by 33%. New Japan. Next major show is June 15 at Budokan Hall with Hashimoto defending against Choshu on top, plus Rick and Scott Steiner vs Hiroshi Hayes and Power Warrior, which is a rematch of the legendary 1991 Tokyo Dome match between those two teams when Power Warrior wrestled under his real name Kensuke Sasaki, Muto and Shona vs Scott Norton and Mike Enos, Liger and Samurai and Otani and Ishizawa vs Sasuke and Sato and Michinoku and Shiryu, Fujinami and Fujiwara vs Nagami and Iizuka, Pegasus and Tiger vs Malenko and Armstrong and prelims. Choshu has done a new twist on booking leading up to this match. Normally a challenger leading up to a title match would be expected to score wins, but this past week in tag action, Choshu was pinned by Hayes' Northern Lights suplex on June 8 and submitted to Chono's STF on June 13 in Osaka. Aside from the Michinoku pro wrestlers facing Liger & Co. and the G1 Climax tournament, also at the August 3 to August 7 Sumo Hall series will be Steiners, Jurassic Powers, Norton and Hercules, and El Gigante. A tournament will be held on July 8 and July 9 in Sapporo to determine the final 4 wrestlers in the 12-man G1 tournament. First 8 already announced are Chono, Fujinami, Fujiwara, Hayes, Muto, Hashimoto, Choshu, and Power. Tournament will be on July 8. Otani vs Kengo Kimura, winner faces Satoshi Kojima on July 9. Hiro Saito vs Akira Nagami, winner faces Shiro Koshinaka on July 9. Kabuki vs Takayuki Iizuka, winner faces Super Strong Machine on July 9, and Osamu Kido vs Michiyoshi Ohara, winner faces Tatsutoshi Goto on July 9. Pretty blah overall. Rest of the July 8 card will be Fujiwara and Choshu and Fujinami vs Power and Chono and Hashimoto, Steiners vs Hayes and Muto, Liger and Samurai and Otani vs Black Tiger and American Machine, Art Love Machine Bar, and Black Cat and Nasty Boys vs Max Moon, Paul Diamond, and Steve Regal. Already announced for July 9 are Steiners vs Nasty Boys and Chono vs Regal. June 4 television show did a 1.8 rating. Other Japan notes. War announced its July 17 Sumo Hall card, which will consist of a second one-night 6-man tag tournament. The first tournament will be June 30 in Sendai to create War World 6-man tag team champions. The second tournament will have first-round matches of Hiromichi Fuyuki and Geto and Jado vs Ashura Hara and Super Strong Machine and Earthquake John Tenta, returning quickly after leaving WWF, Koki Kitahara and Takashi Ishikawa and Koji Ishinriki vs Koji Kawanaki Kobayashi and Naruaki Hokaizuki, 2 Green Cow Dojo students who work for his promotion, Animal Hamaguchi and Shoichi Funaki, PWFG, and Mystery Partner vs Kendo Nagasaki and Arashi and Mystery Partner and Genichiro Tenryu and Atsushi Onita and Bam Bam Bigelow vs Vampiro Canadiense and Warlord and Lionheart, Chris Jericho. In addition, Ultimo Dragon defends the UA middleweight title against Sasuke. There are many different storylines at work here. First off, if Tenta's team and Kya's team win in the first round, they'll have to square off, and everyone remembers the legit shoot their match turned into several years ago, which wound up getting Kya fired originally from War. In addition, FMW has a show that night at Korakuen Hall, so if Onita's team goes to the finals as expected, he'll have to work 3 matches that afternoon and still work the main event of his own show at night. War wrestler Yaba, who did a masked sumo gimmick, was unmasked on June 6 at Korakuen Hall by Ultimo Dragon as Hideo Takayama, who formerly worked for One Staring. LLPW announced its biggest show to date on July 14 at the Tokyo Gymnasium, with top matches being Shinobu Kandori vs Bull Nakano, AJW, Eagle Sawai vs Combat Toyota, FMW, Harley Saito and Noriyo Tadano vs Kyoko Inoue and Takako Inoue, AJW, Yashikura Nai vs Megumi Kudo, FMW, and do a tag title with Mima Shimoda and Etsuko Mita, AJW, defending against Gen Yukari and Miki Handa. Pretty weak lineup for such a big show. Otaku Hozumi, who was scheduled to marry Koji Ishinriki on June 18, had her farewell match on June 9 at Korakuen Hall. All Japan Women drew an announced 3,460 at Sapporo Nakajima Gym on June 10 with Manami Toyota and Toshio Yamada keeping their WWA titles in a 2 out of 3 fall match over Saki Hasegawa and Kaoru Ito on top. Kyoko Inoue retained her All-Pacific title on June 11 in Hakodate, pinning Hasegawa. Pancrase next show is July 6 in Ozaki with Masakatsu Funaki vs TBA, working on it being Renko Perdule, a European Samba champion from Holland who went to the semi-finals of the second Ultimate Fight before losing to Royce Gracie, and Masakatsu Funaki vs Boss Rutan. On the May 31 Budokan show, Yoshiki Takahashi came out of it with a badly broken leg courtesy of brutal kicks by Rutan, and will be out of action for 1 year. Akira Maeda was in the US this past week and came back saying he wanted to bring some American boxers or kickboxers into the Rings Battle Dimension 94 tournament, which starts in September. Aswa Dream Machine, Troy Graham, captured the Aswa title from Brian Christopher on June 6 in Memphis after hitting him with a foreign object. After the match, Doug Gilbert and Machine beat up on Christopher until Jerry Lawler made the save, which included throwing fire at manager Scott Bowden. Later on the show, when Lawler defended the unified title against Bam Bam Bigelow, Machine and Gilbert ran in again with Christopher making the save to set up a tornado. All 4 men in the ring at the same time, match with Lawler and Christopher versus Dream and Gilbert. Wolfie D and Spike Huber debuted as a tag team on television on June 11, with the story being they had recently won a non-existent tournament to become the #1 contenders for the Aswa tag title. Bert Prentice, who manages the Eliminators, who hold the belts, refused to give them a title shot, saying they hadn't beaten anyone yet. Eddie Marlin then came out and said that if they didn't give D and Huber a shot, they'd have to give a shot to the Spiders and waiver the loser leave town clause. Prentice agreed to do so, and later in the show, Wolfie and Spike came out wearing masks as the Spiders and beat up the Eliminators in a television brawl, which including Huber pressing one of them overhead and throwing him over the top rope. At the June 6 card, Eliminators kept the belts, beating Spellbinder and Jeff Gaylord when Spellbinder turned on Gaylord. Spellbinder wouldn't tag in, then finally turned on Gaylord, causing him to get pinned, and they did a 3-on-1 on Gaylord after the match. Prentice, who managed Spellbinder when both were faces, said that Spellbinder had always been loyal to him. Spellbinder had a television match this week against Jobber Colorado Kid. Prentice came out and ordered the match stopped and told Kid he was impressed with how well he's wrestled. He told Kid, "I want you," which is actually pretty scary. Kid, who was really green on the mic, turned him down, which caused Spellbinder to jump him and the two put makeup on him. Later in the show, Kid said he was really embarrassed about what happened and challenged Prentice to a match. Scott Bowden was on television wearing a mask because Lawler had thrown fire at his face the previous Monday night. During a Gaylord vs Tony Falk match, Spellbinder did a run-in and he and Falk double-teamed Gaylord, but Gaylord made his own comeback. Finally on television, Lawler and Christopher had a match against Lawler's favorite television opponent, Reggie B. Fine and Coco Ware. It wound up with Fine and Ware going at each other with Bowden siding with Fine, thus turning Ware face. Mike Samples and his crew worked 6/6 in Memphis but are already gone. 6/13 in Memphis was scheduled as Anthony Michaels vs The Hornet, Brian Keys, Falk vs Tony Williams, Debbie Combs vs Lady Satan, usually when Combs in the past had worked against Lady Satan, It has been her mother Cora, and it probably is in this case as well. Colorado Kid vs Prentice, Ware vs Fine, Spellbinder vs Gaylord, Eliminators vs Huber and D Underhoods for the tag title and the Tornado match. SMW. Tim Horner, who, along with Jim Cornette and Sandy Scott pretty well were part of this company before it started, has parted company with Cornette and SMW. Horner was working as Kendo the Samurai, which, at least based on TV reaction, was totally dead, although the character is being maintained and Bobby Blaze has been brought back to fill the role. Tracy Smothers won the TV title from Kendo at the June 7 tapings in Loudon, Tennessee. They taped television for the weekends of June 18 through July 9 in Loudon. On the show that airs June 18, during a Thrill Seekers squash, Stephen Dunn did color, saying the Thrill Seekers always cheat to win. Seekers and Well Done then had a confrontation with the Seekers, calling Well Done crybabies. Chris Jericho said that since his father played for 11 years in the NHL, legit as has been reported here, he challenged them to penalty box matches. Dunn then said, "It's great that your old man was a basketball player." Ricky Morton did an interview with a big box that he said was a gift for Tammy Fitch. Fitch then came out with Undertaker Brian Lee and Chris Condito. Lee and Condito told her it was a trick, but she believed that Morton was in love with her and it was legit. Finally Tammy unwraps the gift and it's Bambi, the woman wrestler, not the deer. Bambi started attacking Fitch, which sets up 6-person tags for the first week of July. Jake Roberts showed up with a do-rag, then took the rag off to reveal his bald head courtesy of his last visit to Mexico. Roberts said the new haircut was to throw Dirty White Boy off. Roberts then had a squash match against James Atkins. Kendo came out with the snake bag. After the match, Roberts motions to Kendo to give him the bag, but Kendo refuses. Out comes Dirty White Boy, who puts his arm around Kendo. Jake is all befuddled but ends up going into the dressing room and finding the so-called original Kendo all locked up. Jake and Kendo then attack White Boy and Kendo, with the babyface Kendo doing a spinning splash off the top rope. The face Kendo is Scott Studd, a Georgia independent wrestler who was said to have looked good in the limited role he had on the tape. Apparently Studd was in Tijuana with Jake at Triple Mania, watching over Jake's money, since Jake got his money in advance to shave his head, during the time he was in the ring. White Boy and face Kendo did an interview with White Boy saying he could play mind games as well as Jake, and then took off his patch and said his eye had healed. Jim Cornette announced that he had formed a union called FITE, Federation of Intimidators, Thugs and Eliminators, and that he was the union leader. Bruiser Bedlam was the dock boss, Killer Kyle was the enforcer, and that Dory and Terry Funk were in charge of the Amarillo branch. Bob Armstrong challenged the Funks on behalf of son Steven Scott, which is the beginning of a lengthy angle. Kendo then lost the TV belt to Smothers. Both men were down, with heel Kendo falling onto the floor, when face Kendo came out and into the ring and lays down, and Smothers covers him for the title win. When heel Kendo came out, he was furious, claiming he hadn't been pinned. On the June 25 show, Timothy Well challenges either member of the Thrill Seekers to a match where the first violation of the rules is a DQ, and Lance Storm accepts for his team. Smothers had a TV title defense against Chris Hamrick, with Cornette telling Hamrick that he could join the union if he wins. Bedlam and Kyle came to ringside to watch the match but were offset by Scott and Steve Armstrong, and Smothers retained the title. During a White Boy squash, Jake Roberts and Kendo did a run-in, and then the second Kendo came out. Roberts DDT'd both Kendos. Storm vs. Well ended with Well spitting in Storm's face and Storm losing his cool and punching Well, thus getting disqualified. On the July 2 show, after a rock and roll squash with Bambi in their corner, Lee, Condito and Fitch came out, and Fitch KO'd Bambi with her purse and sprayed hairspray in Robert Gibson's eyes, then pulled out scissors and cut some of Ricky Morton's hair. The TV title match saw Smothers vs. Kyle, which Smothers won. After the match, Bedlam KO'd Smothers with Nux. All the jobbers ran in with Kyle cleaning house of them until Scott and Steve Armstrong came out. However, Lee, Condito and Fitch attacked the Armstrongs with Tammy spraying Scott. Finally Bob Armstrong ran in and attacks everyone, but the heels finally held Bob, and Cornette gave him 4 shots with the tennis racket and hit him with a Nux, and Bob juiced. Rock and Roll Express then ran in while Armstrong walked back to the dressing room, with the announcers apparently going to say that's the first time they've ever seen Bob Armstrong walk away in the middle of a fight. Armstrong ended up returning with a baseball bat and hit every heel once with it, running them all off. After the brawl, Armstrong announced he's stepping down as commissioner effective 8/5, so he can wrestle again, and that he was going to form his own union to face Cornette's union. On the final show, Roberts does an interview and heel Kendo comes out, dragging Bambi with him. Roberts does all sorts of nasty things to her and then hooks her for the DDT, but White Boy makes the save. Roberts and Kendo then attack White Boy in the face. Kendo makes the save. Morton does an interview saying that he'll put up his hair in a match against Lee and Condito provided one of them put up their hair as well. Fitch is really happy, pushing to sign the match, but Lee and Condito get mad because they don't want to put up their hair, but she signs anyway. Later Lee and Condito have a squash match and Morton comes out and tells the announcers that Fitch signed the contract without reading it, because the contract says that if Lee and Condito lose the match, Fitch is the one who loses her hair. Fat chance. Anyway, Lee and Condito jump out of the ring and end up losing via countout. White Boy does an interview saying he's got an idea for a match with Roberts. The show ends with a cake, and you know in wrestling where there's a cake, there's going to end up with a face in the cake. See how many clues it takes you to figure this angle out. The cake is supposed to be a gift from the fans to the Thrill Seekers. Then Cornette comes out. Have you figured out where this angle is going yet? Yes, the cake ends up in Cornette's face. On the television that aired 6/11, on the history of Knoxville wrestling, they covered the old Southeastern Championship Wrestling promotion, talking about stars like Kevin Sullivan, Dick Slater, and then showed a photo of Sterling Golden, a younger Hulk Hogan, working the territory. TV production values over the past few weeks have been down. The angle and interviews regarding Roberts and White Boy are tremendous from both ends. Roberts is so good at what he does that he should be in movies or television acting, anywhere but inside the ring doing matches. At the house shows this week, Well missed the shots due to a family illness and was generally replaced by Condito as Dunn's tag partner against the Thrill Seekers, with Condito saying he wanted to see firsthand how good the Thrill Seekers were, and then largely refused to tag in most of the match. Bedlam worked the first of 4 shows but was replaced by Kyle on the next 3 and scheduled coal miners' glove matches against Smothers. In what appears to be a cost-cutting measure, there has been a change in pay scale for the wrestlers. A lot of the guys had been earning $150 per show, which has now been changed to $400 per week regardless of the number of shows, with 3 to 4 shows scheduled each week at this point in time, so it's more often than not less money than it would have been under the old scale. The faces all make extra money working the gimmick table, and some of them share their gimmick money with the heel they work with. Here and there. This week's Sabu update. Sabu worked June 11th in Lincoln Park, Michigan for promoter Malcolm Monroe, who earlier wrestled the Sheik in a singles match when Abdullah the Butcher no-showed, for his second match against Too Cold Scorpio. Scorpio superplexed Sabu while standing on the top rope and crashed through the boards, breaking the ring. Both men still did a lot of high-risk moves, including each missing moonsaults in the broken ring. Sabu wound up winning. The Miami Herald ran a story in Alex Mervis' wrestling column on Sabu and its wrestling column talking about him using crazy glue, not super glue as reported here, when he broke his hand in Japan in early May. All Japan's Dan Profit worked under the name Flying Phil LaFleur for West Coast Championship Wrestling on June 2 in Kelowna, BC, forming a tag team with Mike Lazansky, in Mexico, and Brett Como of Calgary, with JC Ice, for whatever reason, on the opposite side. I mean, if we still had a draft I can understand JC Ice winding up in Canada, but today? On Thursday night at a Chicago racetrack there was a 36-to-1 horse called Dick the Bruiser which wound up winning its race. Silver Nugget in Las Vegas on June 19 has Piloto Nuclear and Jalisco I vs Loverboy and? With tickets priced from $15 to $25. Who are they kidding? July 1 in Dallas at the Sportatorium is already being pushed with the headline match of Terry Gordy vs Modib. June 26 in Melrose, Massachusetts for Century Wrestling Alliance is headlined by Doink and Doink, Matt Bourne and Steve Kieran teaming up together for the first time on the indie circuit, versus Troublemakers plus Vic Steamboat versus Kevin Sullivan. Herb Abrams has promoted the George Zaorian Benefit Show, I'm kidding about half of that, on September 23 at the MGM Grand Hotel in Las Vegas with 6 championship matches: World Champion Steve Williams vs Sid Vicious, World Tag Team Champions Killer Bees vs Warlord and Barbarian, America's Champion Tito Santana vs Stan Spivey, Southern Champ Bob Orton vs Ludwig Borga, Women's Champion Magnificent Mimi vs Candy Divine, Midget Champion Little Tokyo vs Karate Kid, Lumberjack match with Jimmy Snuka vs Cactus Jack, Jim Duggan vs Hercules Hernandez and prelims. There will be a shoot-style wrestling show on June 18 at 2 p.m. at Yaohan Plaza in Little Tokyo, 333S Alameda, 3rd floor, in Los Angeles with free admission. World Class Wrestling has a show June 18 in Greenville, Texas with Terry Gordy vs Kevin Von Erich, can you believe he's now 37, on top? Gary Worochik's Midwest Territorial Wrestling has shows July 14 in Port Huron, Michigan. Road Warrior Hawk and Bobo Brazil Jr. vs. International Freedom Fighters in a Cage, Doink Born vs. Bastion Booger, July 15 in Jackson, Michigan. Hawk and Doink vs. Fighters, Al Snow vs. Booger, and July 16 in Taylor, Michigan. Tommy Firo is doing a wrestling convention on July 30 at the Holiday Inn in Totowa, New Jersey, advertising Too Cold Scorpio, Missy Hyatt, Tony Atlas, Damian Demento, and Doink. Steve Gator Wolf is booking an Indian reservation tour of Arizona next month. AAA. Because of the World Cup, there are no new television tapings scheduled until July 1, although there is enough television already shot to last until the end of the month. Since this seems to be a frequently asked question, the next show in Tijuana will be July 8, and it will be a television taping. No card has been booked yet, although Love Machine and Eddie Guerrero won't be there as they're with New Japan until the Chicago and New York shows. Pedro Morales, who held the WWF title 1971-73 and actually, despite legend being to the contrary, sold out Madison Square Garden more consistently than either Bruno Sammartino or Bob Backlund, let alone Hulk Hogan, will be honored at the IWC show at the Paramount Theater on July 24. The Khan and Jake Roberts hair vs. hair match aired on Sunday in Mexico, and will air June 26 in Los Angeles. The reason Psicosis and La Parka, who are heels, were involved in holding Roberts down to get his head shaved are because Psicosis is from Tijuana, where the match took place, and Parka is his tag team partner. The trio's title change from May 22 in Juarez aired over the weekend and I was told it was a 4 stars match. TV Main has Conan and Heavy Metal and Tinieblas Jr. and Perro Aguayo beating Guerrero and Machine and Chicano Power and El Satanico. Satanico had walked out on the same partners on the previous week's TV. Machine and Guerrero kept making fun of Satanico when he would come out on the short end of spots in the first fall, which ended when Conan made Machine submit to the STF. In the second fall, Satanico pinned Conan clean with a backslide which left his partners in stunned silence. In the third fall, the other 3 heels turned on Satanico, but as Satanico was getting pounded, he managed to kick Guerrero low and Aguayo pinned Guerrero to take the match. There will be a talk show in Mexico City on June 28 that will have Conan, Vampiro, Kanek and other wrestlers from all 3 groups. Expect some fireworks on that show. Don't be surprised to see Black Magic jump here if Vampiro does, and wind up being managed by Magnate, $1 Million Man. Geez, a muscular black wrestler managed by the $1 Million Man. Whoever could have come up with that concept? AAA shows in Vancouver and Yakima, Washington were moved back 1 week to June 22 and June 23. Pena is headed to India to set up a future tour, as AAA apparently is getting big ratings on Indian television. A few notes answering the question about why Jerrito Estrada wrestles as a midget. Aside from the fact he looks so much like Jerry Estrada, the whole concept of midgets is that they dress these really short guys, in particular Mascara de Sagrada and Octagon Cheeto, as heroes that very young children ages 5 to 8 can relate to. Espectrito's role is that he's like a fat 10-year-old who picks on them, and Estrada is like a 13-year-old who is picking on the younger kids. In addition, for Sagrada and Octagon Cheeto to be able to pull off the moves they do, they need a strong base for the moves, which is why the heel minis need to be larger than the faces. A clarification on the Carlos Rey letter regarding Cien Caras. It has been traditional for years in Mexico after a great match for fans to throw coins at the wrestlers in respect, since traditionally wrestlers have been lowly paid and it was considered like tipping for a great performance. Cien Caras did suffer a serious eye injury a few years back from a coin, but in that instance it wasn't throwing a coin out of respect but because he was getting so much heat from the fans that someone threw something at him which injured him. Throwing coins has largely disappeared because the old fans have been replaced by new fans and old wrestlers by new better paid wrestlers, and the whole psychology has changed. However, in the traditional weekly towns for MLL and UWA, some of the older fans do still throw coins, although it doesn't take place at the AAA shows, which attract a younger audience with less reliance on old traditions. Former wrestler Tamba, also known as Abdullah Tamba for his resemblance to Abdullah the Butcher both in face and body, and nicknamed the Flying Elephant because he did drop kicks and head scissors with the Abdullah-sized frame, who was a star in the late 70s through the late 80s, was rumored to have died, and the rumor even gained so much credence it was reported in some wrestling magazines and a moment of silence was given for him at some shows. However, to quell spreading of the rumor, Tamba appeared on the 5/22 AAA television taping from his hometown Ciudad Juarez saying rumors of his demise were premature. WCW. Add Keith and Kent Cole, at an estimated $40,000 per year each, To the list of those dropped in cost-cutting measures, although they really had no place since Sol Anderson lost power. There are reports from the company that Max Payne's departure was decided upon by the company and not by Payne, since the company was attempting to help get Payne work. Vader is headed back to Japan at the end of the month to do the lead heel role in a movie called Fist of the North Star. WCW Saturday Night on June 4 did a 2.1 rating, second half of Zbyszko Regal Plus announcement of Hogan's decision, while Main Event did a 1.9 and Power Hour a 1.4. Antonio Inoki is booked for the August 26 Clash of the Champions. I assume that's either a favor to New Japan or a favor to Hogan. There is no definite site for the event at press time, but the original site of Wichita, Kansas is at best iffy. Expect Harlem Heat to get a big push. Hogan and Jimmy Hart put together new entrance music called American Made. Now who could that be a slap at? They also appeared June 14 in New York at the Licensing Industry's annual convention, and Hogan had the longest lines of anyone, which was a major contrast from last year when WWF and WCW's presence was largely ignored. The Guerrero brothers, not sure which ones, are headed here in August to feud with Terry Funk and Bunkhouse Buck, almost surely because they are running house shows in Texas. WWF. As expected, they are going to keep the major arenas' ringside prices up to $25 at the end of the WrestleMania Revenge Tour, since people are more than willing to pay that price. Ringside in major cities had ranged from $15 to $19 previously, although in comparison to tickets to NBA, NHL and NFL, or wrestling in Japan, the good seats are still dirt cheap. As it did with the Revenge Tour, while attendance is averaging roughly the same as it did 1 year ago, the grosses are up significantly. King Kong Bundy is telling everyone that he's headed in, perhaps as soon as the pay-per-view show. A lot of talk of Davey Boy Smith returning as well, although we don't know that for a fact. The Barbarian worked on top at the B-Team house shows against Razor Ramon, because Diesel has been pulled from all shows the past 2 weekends because of injuries, to save him for King of the Ring. Cable trade publications are predicting the lowest buy rate in WWF pay-per-view history for King of the Ring. After all the hype is over, the biggest disappointment has to be the Piper Lawler build-up, which couldn't even touch the level the two reached in the early 80s in Atlanta, where the match never took place since Piper was fired days before. It really hurt the build-up that Piper never made a live appearance at a taping, and it seems the pub for Hogan's return has overshadowed Piper's return. Add Brian Blair and Jim Brunzell to the list of those filing suits against Titan, filing a breach of contract suit this past month. The new WWF magazine reached subscribers listing all 8 contestants for King of the Ring, listing Tatanka a week before the match he won to earn the spot aired. That match on the 6/6 Raw did a 3.1 rating, while All-American that weekend did a 1.6 and Mania and 0.9. The clips on June 13 showing the Hall of Fame banquet from Baltimore was some of the classiest television material on U.S. wrestling in years. Regis Philbin, a longtime friend of Fred Blassie's, was the MC. They showed clips of Blassie and the rest accepting their awards and clips of current stars Ted DiBiase, Bret Hart, Randy Savage and Shawn Michaels in attendance. Only 40 to 50 fans turned out on June 6 for the tug-of-war on the USS Intrepid with WWF Wrestlers vs. Military, which the wrestlers won. Funny to see Bam Bam Bigelow hug and high-five Mabel after the win airing on television. WrestleMania Revenge shows over the weekend drew fair, 5,500, in Pittsburgh on June 10 and Very Good, 5,000, which is nearly full, on June 11 in Niagara Falls. B shows did poorly except for a strong showing in Delaware. Upcoming international tours are July 8 to July 15 in Czechoslovakia, Austria and Germany, and July 14 to July 21 in Philippines, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. Survivor Series is tentative for November 22 at the Meadowlands and Royal Rumble for January 21 at the Tampa Sun Dome. July cards will be headlined by Bret vs. Owen in a most falls in an hour match, Lawler vs. Randy Savage, Head Shrinkers vs. Heavenly Bodies for tag belts, and Yokozuna vs. Typhoon. WWF wrestling figures are the 5th best-selling toy in Great Britain. All-American on July 19 airs live from Baltimore with Johnny Polar shaving his beard on the show. The Reader's Pages. Hogan in WCW. WCW is wasting its time and a lot of money trying to bring in Hulk Hogan for a few major shows. Hulk Hogan doesn't mean the same to the general public as he once did. Hogan had his fame, but now he's from the era of Arsenio Hall and New Kids on the Block. WCW would be better served for the future by subsidizing regional promotions in hopes of developing the next Hulk Hogan or Ric Flair. Adam Kane. Farmington, Michigan. Ray Candy. The recent obit on Ray Candy really did the man justice. I had the opportunity to meet and get to know Ray during his visits to the Florida circuit in the late 70s and early 80s. In addition to being nobody to mess with, he was one of the nicest and most sincere human beings I've ever met. That sentiment has been echoed by many who knew him. Ray worked main events often during the second half of 1976 in Florida, often teaming with Dusty Rhodes. Barry Rose. Sunrise, Florida. 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 Barry Rose.